welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 473, and today's date is September 22nd, 2014, and the title of this episode is U.S. Coalition Falling Apart, Countries Say No to Syria Strike. Now, before I get started, I just want to welcome those new people who signed up to YouTube, new subscribers. If you haven't visited the X22Report.com site, you can come on over. Many different things on the site. I put up Sentinel alerts every single day, talking about all different things. Most of the time I comment on them. You can come over and take a look at the people. This is a forum of like-minded people. If you're a little hesitant about joining, no problem whatsoever. You can read everything that's on there. The only thing you can't do is comment on the post. If you like to comment, you would have to join up, and that would require an email address and some code name. If you're a little hesitant about giving your real email address, you can go and create another email address and use that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Put your code name in there, whatever you like to be called. You can even upgrade an avatar picture, and then you can join in on the conversations. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand Europe pretty much is falling apart right now. A lot of countries are in depression, a lot of countries are in a recession, and some others are heading in that direction. Now, the central bankers are looking at the entire situation, and they're scratching their heads going, okay, this is completely unsustainable. What are we going to do? Well, it looks like they're starting to figure it out, and they're looking at the public and private sector leverage, and they know it's very high in parts of Europe, and again, this is unstable situation. So what are they going to do? Well, in Italy, as we know, which just recently returned into economic contraction, which is a triple dip recession, they are going to pretty much revise the numbers. Italy's debt GDP for 2013 was just reduced by 5%, making the country appear far more sustainable and attractive to debt investors. Italy's 2013 public debt was revised to 127.9% of GDP from a previous estimate of 132.6% of GDP. So basically what they're doing is the same thing that the United States has been doing, and now it's starting to spread all across Europe and the other parts of the private Western central bank countries. They're just manipulating all the data. Hey, let's go backwards, revise our numbers, move them forward. They did it to the United States, where they include research and development. They went back to 1929, brought it all the way up to present day to keep GDP in the green. They're doing this now to Europe, because it's all falling apart. Now, I saw in one of the corporate news sites today that the Eurozone economy is now turning the corner. Well, yeah, if you pretty much manipulate the numbers and make them the way you want them to be, you can say, yes, Europe is recovering. Now, we saw this, the same propaganda happened back in August of 2013 when the United States central bankers were just about to go into Syria and start World War III. We are seeing the same thing right now, but of course, a year later, things are a lot worse. So they need to start manipulate all the different statistics to make it look like we're in some type of recovery. Now, here in the United States, of course, they keep the stock market continually going up. They're making sure you understand that the S&P is reaching new time highs. You have to make sure that the gold is continually suppressed to make it look like there's absolutely nothing going on here in the United States. But what are we seeing? We're seeing real economic data, which is completely separate and apart from their manipulated numbers. Now, I said this back in the spring and summer. With real estate, we were going to see a bump in the numbers, and yes, we did this summer. They went up. But during that time, mortgage applications, refinance applications, permits, all were dropping throughout the summer. But of course, existing home sales were continually rising, and now all of a sudden they're starting to drop. We're heading out of the summer, which is the hot time for real estate, and we're starting to see that existing home sales, they are dropping now by 1.1%, and they dropped in August. Of course, in August, the experts thought it was going to rise by 1%, but it actually turned out to be the opposite. This is the biggest miss since November of 2013. First-time home buyers pretty much remain on the sidelines, about 29% of total sales. And we can see right now, as mortgage applications continually fall, these first-time home buyers, this percentage is going to get lower and lower and lower. The National Association of Realtors blames the drop on investors stepping away from the market. Now, we understand that it was hedge funds, investment companies, foreign investors. They were paying in cash. Now they're like, okay, the market is done. Prices are leveling off. Actually, I'm seeing them really drop now in many different areas. When you look around the areas, you can see, if I use Zillow to do this, you can use Realtor.com, you can use Trulia, but it's a nice snapshot. You go into a neighborhood, you see an overview, you click on a couple homes, and what do you see? The houses have been on the market since June, May, April, and they're continually lowering the prices. Now, I see this in the Northeast, I see it in the South and the West, and this is exactly what we're seeing. Now, if we break this down to see how bad real estate is, it is really bad. Now, houses from 0 to 100,000, sales are down by 16%. And homes that are between 100 and 250,000, we are seeing sales are down by -5%. Now we look at 250 to 500,000, sales are down by -3%. If we move to 500 to 750,000, we're looking at -1.5%. 750 to 1 million, -1.7%. And the only place we see growth right now is 1 million plus with 2.7%. But what's happening here is that prices are coming down. We're seeing a fall in prices in all homes from 100,000 all the way up to 1 million, on average of about 3 to 4% fall in price. The only place we see a growth and prices going higher are 1 million plus. So we can see right now the market is starting to fall apart. And of course, those 1%ers, they have their homes, they're still buying them, they're still pushing the prices up. But everywhere else, the middle class, completely decimated, and we're starting to see housing really start to fall apart. And as we go through the fall into winter, it's going to get worse and worse. And of course, what this means is there's going to be a lot of homes out there. There's going to be a lot more foreclosures coming on the market. There's going to be a lot of people losing their jobs who can't sell their homes. And the whole thing is going to be a repeat of 2007, 2008, 2009. But this time, it is going to be much, much worse. And the U.S. government central bankers realize this. They understand this is falling apart, and they know they have to get something going to cover this up. And this is why they're pushing so hard with the fear-mongering of the Islamic State, with pushing into Syria, with demonizing Russia, provoking China, provoking North Korea, trying to get themselves into Africa. All of this is being done to get the war started. They're not very successful in doing this, and they're continually trying. And again, their last option will be an event to bring the American people together to say, yes, we need to go to war. And this is exactly what's going to happen. Now, we're starting to see that FATCA is really starting to hurt the American people overseas. The impact of the Foreign Accounts Tax Compliance Act on the lives of hardworking, law-abiding, middle-class Americans who settled outside the U.S. Is pretty much having a devastating effect on them. Overseas Americans are forced to live in an atmosphere of lingering financial uncertainty. Their family relationships are often strained. Business and employment opportunities have become severely limited. Several respondents even reported that they feel like second-class citizens or criminals, although they didn't do anything wrong. 1 in 6 Americans said that their checking, savings, or retirement accounts have been closed following FATCA's implementation, and the study stated 12.7% failed to open any type of account. Moreover, Americans living outside the U.S. also reported that they were passed over for a promotion or a job, 5.6% that they were otherwise qualified for, simply because reporting requirements imposed by FATCA are very hard and costly to meet. So we can see right now a lot of people are saying it is very, very difficult overseas. They're closing their accounts. They don't want them to find out what they have. And of course, all these banks have to report to the United States government because they've made deals with them. And we can see right now, this is not to benefit the American people whatsoever. Actually, this is here to hurt the American people, to grab their money and take as much as they possibly can. Now, it looks like Obama has signed the $1 trillion stopgap spending bill, and of course the Syrian funding is in this. This will stop the shutdown of the U.S. government, and let me just say, $1 trillion, quite a bit of money, and we can see the debt just continually compounding over and over as time goes on. It's reaching all-time new highs, and there is nothing to stop this whatsoever. The president signed the measures which averted a shutdown and kept the government funded through December 11th at 4:30 p.m. in the Oval Office. So it will stay this way until December 11th, and then they have to pretty much figure something else out there. Now, it looks like Russia is calling a shift away from U.S. Treasuries into BRIC bonds, and they're saying they should conduct transactions in national currencies, bypassing cross rates with the U.S. dollar. Russia is considering diversifying into debt portfolio away from countries that have imposed sanctions on Moscow and into the papers of the BRICS partners. So it looks like they're going to get out of treasuries, put their currency into BRIC bonds, and separate themselves from the U.S. dollar. Now, it looks like China is looking to become the dominant gold market with a physical exchange. Precious metal refineries are going to be joined into their exchange. The presence of international refineries and possibly international mints as possible direct participants within the SGEI trading should improve liquidity and price discovery on the new international exchange and help it become a serious competitor to the existing duopoly of the gold price discovery carried out on the London OTC market and the New York gold futures market. One encouraging factor about the SGE and the SGE International platform is that there is a lot of physical gold flowing through the exchange. Therefore, price discovery is not just based on inverted pyramid and mostly unallocated gold as in London, or mostly cash traded futures paper gold as in New York. We're going to see, hopefully, that real pricing of gold is now done in China, which is going to have a complete different relationship with the paper market. And this is what they're expecting. And they brought in the refineries, they brought in the mints, and we're going to have to see how this turns out. The PBOC in gold, China using gold to position yuan as their reserve currency. So it looks like they're positioning gold also to back up the yuan. So they're doing all of this all at once. And we know the exchange went live 10 days earlier, and we can see they're really pushing this. And again, gold, China has brought on a lot of gold. They have a lot of gold in reserves. So does Russia. And we can see they're really making the move right now. And we thought about this a long time ago, where the yuan would be backed by gold. They have been ramping up on gold, so we're really starting to see they are definitely moving in this direction. And we're going to have to really take a close look to see what happens with this physical gold exchange. And we have to remember they're building this huge vault to hold all this gold. It kind of reminds me of Bretton Woods way back after World War II, where the United States pretty much took hold of all the gold, priced their currency using the gold, and it seems like China is doing pretty much the same exact thing right now. And they're just going in the same direction, where the currency is going to be linked to gold, and we can see they've made bilateral trade deals all across the world. There's a lot of clearinghouses now, and they're really trying to push this forward. Now, of course, the central bankers do not like this. They don't want this to happen because this will pretty much mess up their paper gold market, where they can continually push the gold price down. When this goes live and this continually accelerates, we're going to see a differentiation of gold prices and paper gold prices, and this is where we should see gold go up. Now, of course, the central bankers are going to try to stop all this. They're going to try to create war. They're going to try to push their agenda forward, just like they've always been doing. Now, we understand that the illegals are continually coming over the border, and the borders are still wide open. Nothing has changed pretty much, and we know that Obama has been sending these illegals to 23 different states. within the United States. A lot of times he doesn't let the mayors or the states know that illegals are coming. They just pull up on a bus, they drop them off, and that's that. And of course these illegals are getting working papers. They're put onto Obamacare. The government gives subsidies because they're not making enough to pay for the health insurance. And of course what they're doing is they're trying to pump up their Obamacare numbers. But now in California what we're seeing is that the Department of Homeland Security has approved the design of a driver's license for illegal immigrants. So they're here illegally, but they're getting a DHS driver's license. Now, it looks a little different than the driver's license that you would receive because you are a citizen. The illegals are getting one that looks a little different, so the police can really spot it when they look at it. But what's confusing to me, they're here illegally, but they can get a state driver's license. It makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, now it looks like Sierra Leone, they were in a 3D lockdown to contain Ebola, and now it looks like the lockdown is over, and they went from house to house to check to see if anyone has Ebola, and it looks like they found about 150 new cases of Ebola, and right now they're saying that they've reached about 80% of the homes, and they feel that they have this thing under control at this time. The World Health Organization says that on whole, the outbreaks in Senegal and Nigeria are pretty much contained at this time, and the World Health Organization statement said, adding that there are no new deaths in Guinea. So it looks like since the United States got the soldiers down into these countries, it starting to look like everything's starting to work out down there, where Ebola is being contained. They're not seeing many more of the outbreaks, and we'll have to see, and we'll have to watch this as we go forward, because there's continuous soldiers coming in to all of these countries, and let's see if we start to see, oh, Liberia's under control. Let's see then if the Congo's under control, because that means the IMF, the central bankers, the United States did what they wanted to do. They decimated the economies. They got them on the hook to the central banks. They got these soldiers into these regions, and they've accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. Now, it looks like Russia is now making more deals in Africa. It looks like Russia's Atomic Energy Agency said Monday it will provide up to about 8 nuclear reactors to South Africa through 2023 as part of their strategic partnership on nuclear energy. We also see that Russia is going to build a $3 billion strategic platinum mine in Zimbabwe. So they are really helping out there. They're making economic deals. In the meantime, the United States central bankers are making war wherever they can. Now, it looks like the Afghan people have decided that, yes, we will have a dual government, but it looks like, I'm going to try to pronounce his name here, Ashraf Ghani Ahmadzai is actually the winner. The other, Abdullah, who was running against him, will be like the chief executive, and Ahmadzai will be the president, but they'll work together. But again, we have to remember this candidate who is the president now, he was a former finance minister and World Bank official, and he's going to replace Karzai as the Afghanistan president. And right now what we're seeing, and this is what we said we had to look for, the U.S. had insisted on a democratic transition in Afghanistan. Of course, John Kerry went there, and he pushed to get who they wanted in there. And of course, they threw the other guy a lifeline, saying, yeah, you can be the chief executive, which is absolutely meaningless. It's a position they just made up. And they're saying, yes, they'll run it dually, and you know this is not going to happen. They did this on purpose. Why? Because they want the security deal signed. And once this is signed, it will allow 10,000 American troops to remain in the country. NATO officials had spoken with the newly elected candidate and confirmed that he had promised a quick signature to the security agreement. I wouldn't want to speculate on how fast, but we're hoping for a very fast signature, Breedlove said, adding that the approval of the agreement would open the way not only for U.S. troops to remain, but also for NATO to begin a training mission dubbed Resolute Support starting in January. So we can see the troops are not going to be leaving Afghanistan. Actually, you're going to see troops being added to Afghanistan. The opposite is going to happen, and all that lip service that Obama gave that he's pulling out troops is absolutely false, fake, and phony. It's the same thing he's been using all along. Nothing he says at this point ever comes true. Just like in Iraq, where he's saying there's no boots on the ground, and what do they keep doing? They keep bringing in more and more advisors, which are really combat-ready Marines. Those are boots on the ground. So all of this is completely opposite of what they're saying. So right now in Ukraine, we have Poroshenko out there saying that Ukraine has received all everything that's necessary in terms of military equipment from the United States and other Western countries. We have machine guns, we have tanks, we have multiple launch rocket systems, missiles, artillery, and all the rest that makes it possible to keep the front of such length. And he's saying that, we got this not just from the U.S., but from other countries that helped out. Now, the leadership of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic says Ukrainian forces are supposed to be moving back, putting a buffer zone there between the two forces, and they're not seeing any type of pushback right now. They're saying they're not even preparing to move backwards yet, but we'll have to wait. This might take a couple of days, and we'll see what happens. If not, we'll have to keep an eye on this. But what's very interesting is more reports are coming out of Ukraine saying that Ukrainian special forces continue shelling against the Donbass independent supporters, but only to neutralize them and to neutralize the militia's firing points. So we can see there's still shelling going on. There's still bullets flying, even though there's a ceasefire. So every single area has not stopped fighting yet. Now, out in Yemen, it looks like the rebels pretty much overran the puppet regime. They forced the defense and finance ministries out. It looks like the prime minister has resigned, and it looks like the tribes have pretty much taken over the country. Now, we're going to have to see what Obama does at this point. Is he going to make a move? Because we understand that it's happening in Libya also. The UN is actually stepping in, and they're asking the tribes of Libya to join in on talks. The United Nations mission in Libya says the country's rival groups have agreed to hold talks on September 29th to try to work this out. And as we know, they formed their own government. The other government is on a Greek ship or something out on the water there, and it looks like the tribes in Libya have taken over the country, pushed the puppet regime out. So right now we have Yemen and Libya where the puppet regime is kind of being pushed out of the countries, and we're going to have to see how the United States reacts, because as soon as they start selling the oil, not using the U.S. dollar, this is when things really start to heat up. Now in Lebanon, it looks like the Lebanese army is still fighting the tribes in Lebanon, and what we're seeing now is an introduction of the Islamic State. Again, there are sleeper cells within Lebanon. This is what they want you to believe, because wherever the Islamic State is, this is where the United States can go. And what we're seeing right now is that the Islamic State has escalated its military campaign in Lebanon. The Islamic State has been operating squads along the Lebanese border with Syria and attacking Lebanese army units. So they're really pushing this agenda. They want to make sure they can bring the United States forces into this area when needed. So they need to show that the Islamic State is in these countries. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see them popping up in Yemen and Libya, or that other terrorist group. They have a lot of terrorist groups that they're using now. They just keep throwing them at us to make us afraid and scared, and to show that, yes, there's terrorists everywhere. And we can see they're just pushing this propaganda very, very hard. Now, it looks like the coalition is completely falling apart at this point, and it seems that, yes, countries will join in to help with Iraq, but they're not going to help out with a strike into Syria. France, Germany, UK, Australia, they're all looking at this saying, yes, we will give some assistance to Iraq, but we are not going into Syria at this time. So really the coalition with what the United States central bankers really wanted is kind of falling apart on this, and they realize that they can't go into Syria. It's a sovereign nation. Russia, China giving warnings, Syria giving warnings, and they don't want to take that chance, and they're backing off right now. Now, it looks like Australia has introduced a no-go zone, and they're not allowing their people to go to different countries. If they specify that this is a no-go zone, those people cannot go. A new anti-terrorism measure banning citizens from traveling to certain no-go zones will be introduced to the Australian Parliament on Wednesday as a groundbreaking response to the rise of foreigners joining the Islamic State. The Australian law in question, the Foreign Fighters Bill, will enable the Minister for Foreign Affairs to declare that a particular locality shall be in effect a no-go zone, so that there will be a prohibition of Australian traveling there, and if an Australian travels there, they would be committing an offense. And they tried to do this here in the United States and in the UK, where they wanted to pass these bills. I'm sure they're floating around someplace, and they wanted to keep the people from leaving the country and going to these areas. Now, it looks like Assad is continually granting amnesty to those soldiers that are fighting in the Free Syrian Army, saying, listen, we know you are losing the battle. We understand that you really don't want to fight anymore. And you can see that this is really not about a civil war, a revolution. It's not about Syrians fighting. You see a lot of foreign fighters in these groups, a lot of terrorist groups in there. And if you want amnesty, you can come back to Syria. We will not prosecute you, and you can live among the people. And this has been working out. There are a lot of defectors in the Free Syrian Army going over saying, okay, this fight is not mine anymore. I see this right now. And they're continually doing this, trying to break apart the Free Syrian Army. Now, Putin is out there, and he's saying that we understand there's a coalition being formed by the Western-backed nations, and he's wondering why they're not including China, Russia. So he's deciding that, you know what, maybe we should create our own coalition to fight the Islamic State if it's, you know, that horrific and terrible that they're making grounds everywhere, and maybe we should create our own. He hasn't listed the nations that are going to join the coalition, but I'm sure he's not going to go into Syria and bomb Syria without their permission. He's going to bring in military assistance with Assad's cooperation to fight the Islamic State. And we're going to have to see what the United States is going to do at this point, because this really does not help them, because we understand the Islamic State and the Free Syrian Army are really as one, even though the corporate media and everyone out there is trying to say, no, they're two separate things. They signed a non-aggression pact. They're going to be working together to remove Assad. We know exactly what's going on here. Israel, UK, other Arab nations, along with the United States, created the Islamic State. They trained them in Jordan. They trained them with anti-tank, anti-aircraft weapons. They had them move down into Iraq as soon as Assad won the elections, because they were getting nowhere with the Free Syrian Army. And we can see right now they're doing exactly what they were doing back in August of 2013 when they had that false flag event of chemical weapons. They wanted the U.S. to come in, bomb a path so the Free Syrian Army can get up to Assad. They're doing the same thing right now. They're going to use the Islamic State and the Free Syrian Army as their boots on the ground to get up to where Assad is. And we can see that they're continually using this agenda, and Putin might be throwing a wrench into the situation here. Now, the U.S. military is saying that, you know something, we cannot work with Iraq's army at all. Officials said that Defense Department and Joint Chiefs of Staff have concluded that 50% of Iraq's military was incapable of working with U.S. advisors to stop Islamic State of Iraq and Levant. The officials said these units, almost all of them in the Iraq army, were either deemed unreliable, untrustworthy, or linked to Iran or the former regime of President Saddam Hussein. Dempsey acknowledged that the U.S. airstrikes could not defeat ISIL. He said Baghdad would be asked to grant immunity to the U.S. military presence in Iraq, which now exceeds about 1,200 and expected to reach about 3,000 once all the troops are in there. So we'll have about 3,000 boots on the ground. So far, the Iraqi government has refused with elicited concern from Congress. So we can see right now they want the Iraqi government to sign that bilateral support agreement so the U.S. troops have immunity from what goes on there. But again, Maliki did not sign this. He wanted the troops out of there. the next prime minister that's in there is not signing it at this time, and they want them to sign it so they can bring more boots on the ground into Iraq. And it seems like they're continually pushing this agenda by saying we can't work with Iraq, we can't work with the troops, we need you to sign this so we can bring more troops into the area. And I'm telling you, once they sign that or force the government to sign it, as more chaos reigns in Iraq, you're going to see a lot of boots on the ground, not just the 3,000. You're going to see 15, 20, just like in Afghanistan. As soon as these agreements are signed, that's an open door to have as many troops in there as they want. Now, John Kerry is still out there, and he's declaring that Syria regime has broken the chemical weapons deal. I mentioned this before. He's saying, yes, Syria has used the chlorine gas, and we know they did. And, of course, they have no proof whatsoever. The only thing the report reported on was that chlorine gas was used in Syria. They didn't say who did it, almost exactly like August of 2013 when they said sarin gas was used. They never said who did it. They just said it was used. And, of course, the United States went off of that and said, see, it's Syria. But we come to find out that, no, it was not Syria. They lied about that. It was the rebels. They're the ones who had the gas. And at this point in time, we can see right now that the rebels, again, hold chemical weapons that Assad could not pretty much tell the agency that was still in existence because they don't have control over it. And they're saying, yes, we still have chemical weapons, but we are not in control. The rebels are. So if we look at the situation, we can see that the rebels, once again, most likely use the chlorine gas. Now, Syria is out there. They're denying all of this. They're saying, we have not used chlorine chemical weapons whatsoever. We've declared our chemical weapons that we have. They have been removed. We have not breached the agreement whatsoever. We did everything that you wanted us to do, and now you're trying to say that we've breached the chemical weapons agreement, and we have not. But what's very interesting at this point is that ISIL, or ISIS, or the Islamic State, has used chlorine gas weapons on about 300 Iraqi troops. And they're saying that Iraq still has chemical weapons manufacturing plants, and there's still remnants of the sarin chemical weapons, and they are able to get their hands on chlorine weapons. Where did they get these from? It could be the chemical weapons that they still have in the rebel-held area of Syria, and this is what they most likely used in Iraq. And we're seeing right now that why does Iraq still have chemical weapons, which there were many reports before which I reported on that they actually really don't. They're abandoned chemical weapons. They're completely void of any type of chemical weapon or any type of gas. They were completely removed, but again, they're just trying to use this propaganda to convince you that there's still chemical weapons there. The Islamic State still can get their hands on it, and this is why they actually use the chlorine gas, because most likely this is linked up to Syria, where the chlorine gas is being held in the rebel area. And again, the rebels and the Islamic State are working together. They have the chemical weapons, and they use them in Iraq. And they're trying to, of course, show you that they use chlorine weapons, and Assad still has chlorine weapons, and they're trying to put these two together somehow, some way. Okay, now it looks like the fear-mongering is still continuing. We have Feinstein out there, and she's the Senate Intelligence Committee chairwoman, and she's saying that she has seen pictures of a photo of a child who was beheaded, dressed up for a party. Now, of course, she has no clue who did this. She doesn't know if it was the rebels. She doesn't know what happened here. She's just saying that, yes, she saw a child who was beheaded, so it had to be the Islamic State. And this is how the government officials use all this information. They believe that this propaganda is evidence. This is not evidence. This is a picture of a little girl without a head, or a man without a head. It doesn't show who did it. It's not evidence. It means absolutely nothing. So they have no proof, but what they do is they show the picture around, they put a little story to it, and of course she's sitting around saying, I have a picture of what I estimate to be a 6-year-old girl in a party dress, white tights, a little red band around her wrist, and she's saying that she's wearing Mary Jane shoes, and she's lying on the ground, and her head is gone. Now, this is terrible. This is an awful thing to happen. You don't know where the picture was taken. You don't know if this was done by a drone strike. You have no clue. And this cannot be used as evidence to convince everyone that it was the Islamic State. Again, this is just more propaganda. Now, it looks like the Islamic State has come out with a new video, and the Islamic State has commanded Muslims to kill disbelieving citizens from countries that have formed a coalition against the extremist fighters. If you can kill a disbelieving American or European, especially the spiteful and filthy French, or an Australian or a Canadian, or any other disbeliever, including the citizens of the countries that entered into coalition against the Islamic State, then rely upon Allah and do it. And of course, this is more fear-mongering, more propaganda that the Islamic State, who is controlled by the U.S. government, Israel, UK, and other Arab nations are putting out there to convince us that we need to go into Syria and strike Syria. And again, they're building this up over time. Now, it seems like that Obama, the administration, is reporting that these Americans who are fighting overseas are now returning to the United States. The first official government confirmation that at least some of the Americans fighting alongside ISIS have come home. And of course, they're breaking into lone wolf groups, they're hiding, they're bomb makers, and everyone needs to be afraid because, again, this is being planned from the inside. This is our government officials who are preparing to have a false flag event occur here in the United States because they have to get everyone scared, everyone begging for war. So this is the story leading up to the false flag event. Now, of course, DHS is out there, and you know how good they are tracking terrorists. They always have their alerts on their website. Actually, they have nothing, and they never have anything. But, of course, they have to be out there telling you that, yes, the Fusion Intelligence Center in Charleston has been on top of classified information coming in daily on ISIS and keeps tabs on how close the terrorist organization's activities might be to the mountain state. And they're saying that, yes, terrorists are in the state. They are training in the mountains. Well, while it could not get into specifics about locations on how many people, the Fusion Center said ISIS is training and recruiting members here in the United States close enough to be concerned. The center has monitored people with terrorist ties passing through here, but they cannot let any of this information out because it is classified. Now, of course, they're using this to build up the scare factor, and we have to understand the cells that are inside the United States are being here and planted in here on purpose because once these events go live, you're going to see a multiple event occur around the country. Now, I've said this many times in my reports before. They need the full country to feel it at once, to say, yes, let's go to war, because they need to get this war started. That's why you're going to see power outages. This is why you're going to see bombs in multiple cities. This is going to be a multi-pronged event, and I've been saying this for quite a while, and I know it's very hard to still believe that this is going to happen, but you can see it forming right now. It's all starting. And, of course, they're going to blame this on groups and countries because they need to bring everyone into this to start World War III. And this is why all these military assets are being placed all around the world, pretty much containing China, containing Russia, getting the military into Africa, getting the Middle East prepped and ready to go into all of these countries with military assets. And the only thing they're waiting for is that huge event, that big surprise where everyone goes, oh my God, we've been hit by a terrorist, and it was coming out of Syria, and it was linked to Assad. And while we were down, Russia decided to cyber attack us, or China decided to cyber attack us and brought the financial institutions down. And you can see how they're going to play this up. Now, during this time, it seems like they have many other agendas going right now. And we see that there has been a White House fence jumper who ran up to the White House. He was unarmed. He did have a, a 3-inch knife or so. And I see more information coming out on this. And he was a vet who seemed that he was getting some type of treatment. And I noticed they added on now to the story, and slowly information's coming out, and you can see where they're headed with this. The man who scaled the fence and ran into the White House on Friday, they searched his car, and he had about 800 rounds of ammunition in his car and had been arrested in July with a sniper rifle and a map marking the executive mansion, and federal prosecutor said on Monday. So we can see right now that it seems that this person might have been set up, and of course it's a vet. They're trying to get the weapons away from all the vets right now because they're very nervous about them rising up, because they're the ones who have been trained. They know how to use all these weapons, and you can see this is a perfect way to show that vets should not have weapons. He had 800 rounds of ammunition in his car. He was arrested in July with a sniper rifle, and you can see how they're all planning this and moving this agenda forward. Because again, they tried this once before. They're pushing the laws where they're saying that, through Obamacare, if you have some type of psychological problem or you're on some type of medication, you shouldn't own a weapon. And of course, they trust our veterans to go out into war with millions of dollars worth of equipment, with machine guns. They allow them to go out there and fight for the American people, but when they come home, they don't want them to have anything. And let me just say, our veterans who go fight are brave. They're putting their lives on their line. They do believe they're fighting for freedom and democracy, even though what's really happening is they're fighting for the bankers, and a lot of them really don't realize this. A lot of them are starting to wake up now and starting to realize what they're doing. And again, you have to remember, it is not the fault of them. They think they're doing the right thing, and I applaud them for going out there and defending what they think they're defending. And again, it takes a very strong person to do this, to go out there and to fight knowing that you could be killed in at any second while you're fighting out there. But you can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to place the veterans and contain them into this small class of people where, oh, look, they have problems, they shouldn't have weapons, they're going to do bad things, and we're really starting to see this really being pushed right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.